The decision was made by the art committee here at Becketwood that the October show would be abstract art. We actually were surprised at the number of pieces that came from the homes of the residents here at Becketwood. With the invention of the camera well over 100 years ago, it freed the artists of the Western world, that is Europe and North America, to not have to paint realistic images of people, of architectural settings, of landscapes, and allowed them to paint from their imagination. It could be non-representational, non-figural, and it caused a whole new area of art that could be presented to the public of the world. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the art that is on the walls. The first piece is a piece by the American Indian artist Oscar Howe. He has a strong reputation in the upper Midwest and the Southwest. The piece that you are looking at here starts out with the face of a man, but as you look more carefully, you'll notice that the sides of the face are very chiseled. They can become geometric forms, and they are very balanced. Both shapes are the same size, and the color is reproduced so that they match the tonality of the skin. But those lines of those particular triangles move on into the whole picture. Oscar Howe was accused by art critics of being a cubist like Picasso, but he said, no, the pattern in the whole picture is actually a standard Sioux Indian art form, and it represents a spider's web. The next picture is by Stephen Wolfe, who works in acrylics. There are artists who handle acrylics as if they were watercolors, and there are artists who use them as if they were oils. And Steve is one of the artists who does his painting with acrylics as if it were an oil painting. He starts out, and he does this in many of his pieces, with sketching Gothic arches to form a composition for the painting. And then in the process of applying the paint, he deconstructs those arches until you almost can't see any of them in the work. He layers tonalities one on top of the other. And since the individual paints are very thin, the underpaintings begin to show through. And this becomes one of the interesting aspects because the top layer gets shaded by whatever colors were underneath. And if you look carefully, you can even see that eventually some of these colors began to shimmer as the upper right-hand portion of this painting does. There were only 2 photographic pieces that were entered into the show here, and I want to talk a little about this one that's in black and white and gray. When you first look at it, you are a little confused perhaps about the image. Your mind can't go to a place where you actually would recognize this, and so you think, well, I'll look at the title and see if that helps. And lo and behold, the title is simply Calla Lilies. And then suddenly in the white and gray areas, you see that there are portions of calla lilies that the photographer has been using. And as you study the painting a little bit longer, you find that the black areas form shapes that are just as important as the white areas. And you have a whole arrangement then of shapes which figure into this particular piece. These 3 related pieces that you are looking at now are using geometric shapes, the shapes that we learned when we were in grade school as youngsters. The circle, the square, the rectangle, the triangle. And the artist has stacked these as if she were working with some blocks. You will notice that the arrangement is balanced. That is, while the shapes are maybe different, the work, if it were really done in 3 dimensions, is not going to fall apart. And then she does a very careful balance of the colors involved. Those basic colors of orange and yellow, green and blue and purple. And therefore you have double arrangements, not only of the shapes, but also of the colors. And you have a non-representational piece in one way because although you recognize the geometric forms, They are held within the confines of a background, and they produce an abstract painting. 3 of these paintings are by the Chinese painter Labadeng. And when you first look at them, you wonder, well, there's color here and the changes from space to space, but is there anything else? And then you look a little more closely, and you may see portions of figures, like possibly some trees, some brush, some birds, maybe even portions of a figure, a face possibly, or legs. But are these items actually important? Is the whole piece the thing that the artist is working for, to draw you into the painting so that you have an emotional response to the tonalities that are used, the shapes that form the structure of the painting? It is a little different way of looking at a piece of art rather than, oh, I recognize this person, he lives down the street. I recognize these trees because I pass them every day. It's not what the artist is working for. He was free to use his imagination exactly as he wanted. I wish you could be standing here in front of this painting with me to see just exactly what the artist has done. It is called the Witch Tree, and it overlooks Lake Superior. It is authenticated to be over 400 years old. Obviously, the artist has used her imagination. This imagination made use of intense colors and curved lines more than just a tree. It's an experience for our eyes, following the swirl of the central image and the brilliant lines that gather around this tree, going from the bottom to the top of the painting. Even the background color shouts a bit, telling us that there's a wind coming across the water. If you were seeing this up close, you would notice that the paint is very, very thick, that it forms a texture that almost pulses with energy. Now, if the word tree doesn't register for you, after all, there is no brown or gray bark and virtually no green leaves. Well, try the word witch. Perhaps you can image a witch in a large, colorful cape dancing in the wind around the tree, her face contorted, her long, stiff, curly hair lifted by the wind as she screams her incantation. But if all that fails, just enjoy the color, the movemented brush strokes, the swirling composition, and then the next time you travel to the North Shore, maybe you can actually find the witch tree.